Okay, we're continuing some work on this 2002 Silverado 2500 HD four-wheel drive. We've got the rear brakes done, now we've moved on to the front suspension. This vehicle has a bad upper ball joint. This ball joint right here is bad. Basically, you could replace just the ball joint, take the control arm off, press the ball joint out, press a new ball joint in, and put it back together. However, a lot of times now you can buy the entire control arm. There's a couple reasons why you may want to do that. Number one, if you don't have the ability to press the ball joint in or out, it's already pressed in for you. Number two, there is bushings in here called control arm bushings. They're very prone to go bad, and they make noise and clunking and sounds when they start to go bad. It also keeps your alignment out of whack. So we've got a whole brand new control arm that we bought. We bought it at autopartsdirecttoyou.com. It's a nice heavy-duty control arm. It's got a brand new ball joint that comes with it. That's just a cover to protect it in shipping. The ball joint's pressed in, the boot's installed, it's already pre-greased. It comes with a new nut. It also has a new Zert fitting. The Zert fitting is what screws in there so you can grease these so they last a long time. And most of all, it's got nice new control arm bushings. So we're going to go ahead and show you how to install this nice new control arm onto the vehicle and fix this problem. First thing, obviously get the wheel off the vehicle. We've done that. Jack it up so it's nice and secure. We put a floor jack underneath, and then we jacked it up with a floor jack, and then we put a jack stand underneath the lower control arm. We did that to take if we had just jacked it up by the frame, we may or may not be able to get this control arm off. There's more tension on it. So we jacked it up and secured it with the jack stand, lifted it up, took the weight off the upper ball joint, and now we're going to go ahead and start taking this apart. First thing we'll do is get this wire out of the way. This is the analog brake wire. This goes down to the hub bearing. So this basically has plastic clips that keep it into place. You go up here to the top and it's got a clip, and you unplug it by hand, snap it off, it comes out. Then it's got another little thing here. It's just a little plastic keeper. Use a little pick or a little flathead and pop that open. This comes right out like so. You got another one here. Just look at these little plastic keepers real close. Usually there's just a little quick disconnect on them, like so. And then we'll just lay that out of the way. We don't want to clip that wire. Okay. We've got that out of the way. Now we got this brake line that wraps around here, and it's basically held into place by this bolt here. So we're going to go ahead and take this bolt off. It's a 10mm bolt. Keep this bolt somewhere so you don't lose it. You could screw it into the new control arm, or just keep it close by. Just slide this out of the way. You really don't have to do much else with this, just keep it out of the way. So I'll put it down there like that. Okay, now we got a little more access. One thing you'll want to take notice of is, if you notice these little adjustment pieces here, you'll have one on each side of the control arm, front and back, so there's a total of 4 of them. This is where your alignment is set. Two of the adjustments. This is where you adjust your camber and your caster. They basically, when you have the alignment machine set up, you'll know if you want to move the wheel forward or backward, or the top in or out, and the machine helps you with that. So that's where this is adjusted. You got a nut here and a bolt. You loosen the nut, turn the bolt to adjust it. It pulls the wheel in or out, and you tighten it back up. Now, we don't want to mess up the alignment on this thing. Number one, if the ball joint's bad, there's no way you can align it anyway. But you want to put it back as close to it was before, if not right where it was before. And then when it's all done, go take it in and get it aligned. If you set these way out of whack, if you don't pay attention to these and you just put them way out of whack, one, you'll notice a terrible drive on the way over to the alignment shop. Number two, the guy that does the alignment is going to have a lot tougher time trying to put these things back closer to where they were. It's going to take three times longer to do the alignment than it should. So there's a real simple way to put these back. We have a little cheating method. We just take a little spray paint. Doesn't matter what kind of paint it is. All we're doing is marking them. Just spray it. We painted them beforehand. Just mark each side. Allow that to dry. Once we take those off, all we got to do is put them right back inside those paint marks, and we're right where we were before. So we won't disturb the alignment. If it was in or out, it doesn't matter. We're putting it right back to where it was. So we'll let that dry. Now we'll come down to the ball joint. We want to separate the ball joint from the top of this steering knuckle. This piece down here is called the steering knuckle. The steering knuckle is what attaches the upper control arm and lower control arm to the wheel. And the steering knuckle also bolts to the brake caliper, and your hub bearing assembly and your rotor and all are right here. So we're going to separate this from the knuckle. On the bottom side, you're going to have a cotter pin, which we took out already, and then you have a nut. The nut on this one is 18 millimeters. Remember righty-tighty, lefty-loosey? You can see this ball joint, how bad it is. Can you see that on video? That's the other reason. This particular ball joint, we wouldn't be able to replace the control arm because the part that's pressed into the control arm, that's the part that failed. So this thing's clunking and clanking down the road. It's putting a lot more pressure on the rest of the front end parts, on the brakes, the bearing. Anytime you have a bad front end part, you want to fix it as soon as you can because you're putting a lot of stress on every other part of the front end here. So we'll go ahead and get this nut off of here. Now I'm not going to take that nut all the way off. I'm going to leave it right where it is for just a moment. What I'm going to do is I want to separate that ball joint, the part of that ball joint here, the shaft of the ball joint. It's tapered. It's got a skinny part at the top and a fat part at the bottom. And it's basically pressed in to the knuckle. One good whack on that knuckle will vibrate it loose and it should pop out. If it doesn't, there's a part called a tool called a pickle fork, and it looks like a big fat tuning fork. And you basically wedge it in there, give it a couple whacks with the hammer, it'll come off. So this is another little trick. These Chevys have a nice big fat knuckle here. We're gonna give it a couple whacks with the hammer, it'll probably pop loose. The reason we leave that nut there is just in case, if this thing is loaded, meaning the spring pressure's on it. Notice this doesn't have a coil spring, but it's still spring loaded. It's got a torsion bar. But just in case, if there's any tension on this control arm, if we pop this loose so it doesn't fly up, or so this doesn't fall down and hit you or hurt you or yank on this brake line, we'll have another step to hold us there. So again, I'm leaving the nut there. If this falls forward, it won't yank the brake line out because I've got that nut there. Okay, once it pops loose, it's kind of hard to see, but it pops loose, and there's no tension on this, so we're safe. We can take it the rest of the way off. One thing though, this could fall out towards you. You want to be a little careful of that because, again, you don't want to yank on this brake line. The tie rod will hold it, so I'm going to go ahead and take this off and see what we got. Typically I'd lift the whole control arm up, but since this ball joint's falling out, there's the ball joint, what's left of it. I'm going to lean this forward and let it go right there. The other thing you can yank out is the axle, so you want to be careful of that. In fact, the best thing to do would be to tie this up so it can't yank that axle out. So I will go ahead and do that. Okay, so we're almost there. We basically just got to take these bolts and nuts off up here, and we'll be halfway done. Okay, so what I'm going to do to hold this from falling forward is I'm just going to put a jack stand underneath the rotor. Just like that. You basically you don't want to yank on that axle, you don't want to yank on the brake line, and you don't really want to yank on the steering arm either because that's inside the rack and pinion. But the tie rod rather, that's inside the rack, so you could put extra stress on that. So we got it sitting on the jack stand right here on the base of the rotor, so it's not falling forward, it's right where it needs to be. And now we'll deal with these getting these bolts the rest of the way off up here. Okay, and you want to snug these down super tight. Basically all we did was put the bolts, slide them right back into position. You can look at where the paint was and basically hold one side, tighten the other, and once you get them lined up, both lined up, snug them down super tight. Now I just pushed this forward and lifted my jack stand out here so I can move this around again. The ball joint just fits right in that hole, really simple. We take our nut, screw it on, and we're going to want to pull. I'm going to tighten this bolt up. Oh, the new nut's a different size. The new nut's a 19, looks like. And as you tighten it, you're going to pull the ball joint down towards use the nut to pull the ball joint down. Get that snug down nice and tight. Now we can start putting our little accessories back on. Take your brake line, feed it back up in there. Use our 10mm, tighten it back up. Then we need to put our sensor back in. So snap it in where it goes. Route it back up where it needs to go. This is very important. If you forget to do this, you yank this sensor out, and unfortunately, a lot of times you can't buy just the sensor, you got to buy the whole hub assembly. And we are done. So one last thing you want to do is make sure that is tightened. So we'll get a wrench and snug that down, pop a little grease in it. We'll make sure these are tight. We got our wire okay, we'll get the wheel back on, we'll go take it for a test drive, and then we'll take it to the alignment shop and get it aligned. Anytime you replace a front end part, ball joint, tie rod, control arm bushing, anything dealing with the suspension or the steering, it's a great idea to get it aligned. Most likely it's going to be out of alignment or it could be tweaked a little bit. And so take it down to your local tire shop, alignment shop, have them align it for you, and you'll have a completed job. So thanks again for watching our video. Please visit automex.com often for more auto repair videos. And please visit autopartsdirectttoyou.com for all your auto part needs. Thank you. Bye.